Okay, so good morning and welcome to the Business Cup Challenge 2018. I'm really excited to see all of you here. We've got over 500 students from over 100 different teams enrolled in the program, and we're very excited about how the competition's going to go this year. So as Disha mentioned, I came from the IT industry. I spent over 20 years working in IT. I've been a chief executive officer and a chief information officer, and I've worked with a lot of the Fortune 500. She mentioned Visa, Clorox, Hershey's, Coca-Cola, a lot of companies you've heard of and probably dealt with. So blockchain is a really interesting technology, and I want to help you understand it in terms that will make sense to you. Now, I want you to understand that as part of this blockchain challenge, you do not have to have in-depth technical knowledge of how blockchain works. So as you're answering the case studies, you're not going to have to know how a block is put together and what the encryption protocols are, anything like that. That's not important to being able to figure out how to use blockchain in a business scenario. Okay? So let's start off with something you know. Or maybe you don't. Maybe this is more my time than yours, right? The telephone. Okay, so back when telephones were first invented, if you wanted to call somebody, you'd pick up your phone, and there would be an operator on the end who would answer and say, who would you like to call? And you would tell them the person's name and the city that they were in. And that operator would then ask you to hold the line and would pick up a plug off of the desk in front of her, plug it into a big board that had the names of all of the cities that you could connect to, and she would connect to the city you wanted to call. An operator at the other end would pick up and say, which party, and she would give the name, and they had a list of everybody's names and which sub-office they were at. So she'd plug in another cable. That would get to the sub-office, who would ask, who do you want to talk to? And then they'd plug it into one that went directly to that person's house. Sounds pretty inefficient, yes? You know, you've got 3 or 4 human beings involved just to make one call, and it takes sometimes 5 or 10 minutes just to set up a single call. Okay? Now, when you want to call somebody, does it take that long now? Anybody answering and asking who you want to talk to? No. Because you're the internet generation, right? That's a picture of the entire internet. Didn't know it was that small, did you? No. Okay, so the idea is the internet is a diversified communication network, and it doesn't require human intervention to do things. You want to go to a website, you put in the URL, the website shows up. You want to call somebody over the internet, maybe using Skype or Zoom or another voice over IP service, you just send them a link or click on their handle, and you're immediately talking to them, right? Now, when the internet was developed, it was developed by the military, and it was developed for one primary purpose: to make sure that the military could speak to each other in the event of a nuclear war. Really delightful idea, right? So the internet was designed in a distributed fashion so that even if you took out or blew up a number of different nodes on the internet, you could still route around the damage. Okay, so the internet is basically self-healing. If there's a breakdown, maybe a power failure in a particular area so that the internet nodes through that area aren't available, the internet automatically routes around that damage and keeps working. Okay, so does that seem like a better way to communicate? Right? Back in the old days of AT&T, if one of the central phone offices became unavailable, maybe because of a power failure, you couldn't make phone calls. That was it, right? There was one point of failure. Now with the internet, that's not the case. It just routes around the damage. Blockchain works the same way. Back when we used to have telephones like this, we also used to have ledgers that looked like that. They were on paper, they were filled in with ink, there was one copy of them, that was it. So if you wanted to do business with somebody or you wanted to record important information, you wrote it down on paper. And there was generally only one copy, it was in one place, and it could easily be destroyed, right? Okay, since the beginning of time, I mean, people used to draw things out on papyrus and things like that before we had nice ledgers like this. But it was a single point of failure. Blockchain takes the internet concept and applies that to a ledger. So what you've got is a decentralized ledger. There's no single point of failure. There are many, many copies of it. If you took something like Bitcoin, there are literally tens of millions of copies of this ledger all over the world. If you wanted to wipe out the Bitcoin ledger, you would have to go and individually destroy tens of millions of computers scattered all over the world. Does that sound possible? No. So basically what you've got in blockchain is a way to record information and to update information in a way that it cannot be destroyed. It just exists in so many places, it's got such level of redundancy that there's no way that it can be destroyed. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me give you a real example of what can be done, and I'm going to compare to the way we used to do things, and actually the way things are still going on. Have any of you ever used a credit card, or you've seen your parents use a credit card, right? Okay, so I used to work at Visa International. We were responsible for what's called VisaNet. And VisaNet is how all of your credit card transactions get processed. Okay, so let's look at how this works. Okay, you've got the merchant, let's say Carrefour, right? So you go to the merchant and you want to buy something. So they swipe your card through the reader, or now they stick the card in the reader with the chip and pin or just touch it, right? And what happens is a request for authorization is sent to VisaNet. So they send a request over that says this person wants to charge 200 dirhams on their credit card. VisaNet sends that request for authorization to the bank that issued your credit card, so maybe ENBD. ENBD quickly looks up in their system and says, does this person have enough money for this on their credit card? If they do, it sends back an authorization. If not, it sends back a decline. And that comes back to the merchant. Now later that evening, the merchant will do a step called capturing, where the authorization becomes reality. So they say, okay, we've authorized and blocked this 200 dirhams. Now we're going to actually take it. So when they do the capture, they send a message to their bank. And their bank sends that message through to the VisaNet and says, we authorized this amount of money earlier in the day. We now want it. And VisaNet then balances all of the money to and from every bank every night and sends it to the right place. Okay, now when you go and do this kind of credit card transaction, it takes 7 seconds. That was our service level. We committed to the merchants around the world, and we had well over 400,000 of them, that we would process those transactions, those authorizations, within 7 seconds. But do you see a single point of failure here? VisaNet, exactly. that was a single point of failure. If the VisaNet went down, no merchant in the world would be able to process Visa credit card transactions. Okay? So we had a commitment of having 99.999% uptime, which meant we could be down for 15 minutes a year. Okay? Now, needless to say, when you've got that level of service level commitment, you have to spend a ridiculous amount of money on redundant systems and things like that to keep your system up. So that's how we used to do things. Blockchain works a little differently. So in blockchain, a person or a merchant makes a request for a transaction. It goes out into the public internet in a distributed fashion and goes to thousands, tens of thousands, or millions of nodes. And it says, can this transaction go through? And the nodes each check and send back a response, and basically it's a consensus. If 51% of the nodes polled say yes, the transaction can go through, it goes through. And the transaction then gets updated and becomes part of the blockchain so that every one of the nodes is now aware of it and has a copy of it. And the response goes back to the person requesting the transaction. Do you see a single point of failure there? No. You take out any one node, you take out 20 nodes, it still works. That's the great thing about blockchain. And by the way, all this polling of all of these nodes and coming to a consensus takes 1 second. 7 times faster than what VisaNet had committed to. So now you've got something that is faster, it's cheaper because you're not paying VisaNet. By participating in the blockchain, you are for free giving up some of your CPU cycles and network bandwidth to participate. So there's nobody charging you for these transactions, where VisaNet used to charge for every single transaction, and you're doing it faster. So you've got fast, cheap, and reliable. Isn't that the magic combination? I mean, think about everything a company does, every business. What do they want? They want it fast, cheap, and reliable, of good quality, right? Blockchain hits that magic trifecta. And if you think about it, blockchain is just the last step in a long line of being able to keep track of information. Okay? We started out with things like clay tablets, then we worked up to papyrus, then they had sticks that they used to record things on, then we got to paper, ledgers, then spreadsheets, and now finally the blockchain with the distributed system. But blockchain can do more than just keeping track of accounting information. It can do more than just processing financial transactions. Let's say that you needed to store documents that you needed to be able to prove were authentic and that you needed to make sure were never lost. Maybe like a business contract. Well, you put it on the blockchain. It's replicated in thousands, tens of thousands, millions of nodes around the world. So at any point, if you want to see what did the contract say, you can pull it down from the blockchain. And you can determine that this is in fact the correct contract because of that consensus feature. As long as 51% of the nodes report the same thing, then you can say, okay, I know this is authentic and this is the correct version. Do you think that could be useful? Imagine if you're a judge and you've got 2 people standing in front of you with 2 different versions of the contract. And, well, if they're 2 different versions of the contract, at least one of them is fake, maybe both. But how do you know? Well, if the contract is stored in blockchain, You just pull down the contract and you say, okay, I've got more than 51% consensus. This is the contract. That's it. No question. Gets rid of fraud, gets rid of the ability for people to forge documents, things like that. Okay, so I hope this is starting to trigger in your mind some ideas of what you might be able to do with it. Sir? Yeah. Okay, so there was a question about this 51%. The idea with blockchain is you've duplicated something across a wide number of nodes. Okay, by enforcing a consensus where it has to be returned by 51% or more of the nodes you pull, that prevents people from forging. The only way you could forge something or change something is if you controlled more than 51% of the nodes. Okay, so as long as no one entity or one person can control more than 51% of the nodes, you don't have to worry that someone could fake, because you'll be able to see that, oh no, okay, maybe they control 40%, so 40% come back one way, well, the other 60% will come back the other way. The 51% will prove that you've got what's actual, what's authentic. Okay, so let's talk about what's different about using blockchain. It's fast. The more nodes that you've got on it, the faster it goes. It's not reliant on any central processor, so there's no central point of failure. There's also no central point that can charge you money. As I grew up, a large part of the economy was built on what's called rents. Okay? This is where someone builds a bottleneck into a system and then charges people to use that. I used to work for a company called Equifax. You may have heard about them. They were in the news not too long ago. They got hacked and basically released the credit records of every person in the United States of America. Pretty bad hack. Okay, now Equifax kept everybody's credit records. Now this was information that could be publicly accessed, but what they did is they consolidated it all into one place, and then they convinced companies to pay them a fee every time they accessed someone's credit records. And they've been a billion-dollar company or multi-billion-dollar company for years by charging rents on this data. The data doesn't belong to them. The data actually belongs to the consumers and the banks and all of the other institutions that participate. But because they were able to create a bottleneck, they've been able to charge money for it. Imagine what would happen if we put everybody's credit records on the blockchain. So every bank, every credit card company, every place that you do business with agrees, we're going to use blockchain. So we'll volunteer a little bit of the space on our computers to do this. We'll all submit information about how people pay their credit cards and their bills to the blockchain. And when we want to access that data, we go access it off the blockchain. Equifax is no more. You literally destroy an entire business because it doesn't need to exist. It's been getting wealthy off of charging people for their own data. That's a great scam if you can get away with it. But blockchain lets us get rid of that kind of thing. Blockchain is literally going to revolutionize the way business is done, because it's going to do what your teachers would call disintermediation. In other words, getting rid of the person in the middle who's charging you money. Okay? So what does that do? Well, now not only do you get things done faster, but it's cheaper because you're not having to pay some middle person for your own information. Okay? Blockchain is accessible from anywhere. If you can get to the internet, you can get to the blockchain. Okay, so it makes it very easy for you to get to the data. You don't have to worry, is that company up, or can I get to that company? and especially comparing it to physical records, can I get there? Are they open? Can they show me the books? That kind of thing. Anywhere you are in the world, you can access blockchain. Now, please understand, too, that when I talk about blockchain, it's not that there's one blockchain in the whole world that everybody's using. Anybody can set up a blockchain for any purpose, and they all operate independently. So it's just how many people replicate your blockchain for the purpose that you're using it for. Okay. Blockchain is also encrypted. So let's say that you're talking about that business contract. If you want to store a business contract in blockchain, do you want all of your competitors to be able to read your contract? No, because they could know the terms of your contract and be able to use that against you. So things that you store in blockchain are encrypted, and they can be encrypted multiple times. So for example, the blockchain is encrypted, but everybody using that blockchain can decrypt it. Okay, so let's take Bitcoin as an example. Everybody who's running Bitcoin on their system can read the Bitcoin blockchain, so you're able to decrypt it. Why is it encrypted? Well, it's to make sure that the data remains immutable, it remains constant, and it can't be read by anybody not on that blockchain. But let's say that the business you set up was creating a contract storage system for other businesses. And the businesses want to put their contract on your blockchain, but they don't want everybody else on that blockchain to be able to read it. Well, you can encrypt the contract and then put that encrypted file on the blockchain, so that the only two people or so who have the keys to that encryption are the two businesses who signed the contract. But yet you still have an unchangeable, provable version of the contract that you can access from anywhere. So that way you've got the benefit of having a distributed system combined with the security of having a document that only your company and the other company can read. Does that make sense? Okay. And I've used this word a few times. It's immutable. It can't be changed. So when something is put on the blockchain, that's it. The way it's put on the blockchain is final. It doesn't change. The only way you could change it would be if you could get a hold of more than 51% of the nodes and change it on every single one of those nodes. So for all practical purposes, once it's on the blockchain, it can't be changed, which prevents people from committing fraud or by trying to make something look like what it isn't. Does that make sense? And the last thing is, it can't be forged. In order to forge something, you would have to somehow get it on more than 51% of the nodes, which is basically an impossibility. So if we think of Bitcoin, if somebody wanted to make it look like you had paid them some Bitcoin to steal your money, they would have to be able to get that onto more than 51% of the nodes, which is a physical impossibility. Now, you probably heard there have been some Bitcoin hacks where people have lost their money. That's a different matter. They weren't forging what was on the blockchain. What they did is they stole somebody's ID and password, and then when they logged in with that ID and password, they could conduct any transaction that person could do. So the transactions were authentic as far as blockchain is concerned. It's just they were using stolen credentials, and unfortunately, there's no way to prevent that. You know, if you have your credentials so easy to hack that somebody can hack it, or you send your credentials to somebody who sent you an email asking for them, you're going to get ripped off. You know, as someone once said, there's no cure for stupid, right? So you don't send people your ID and password to financial accounts because they're going to take your money. That's just the fact of it, right? Okay, so if we talk about blockchain, what you all probably know about blockchain before you came in here was cryptocurrency, right? That's been in the news a lot lately. You know, people were all excited. If you remember about a year ago, everybody was talking about Bitcoin because it was up to like $19,000 per Bitcoin. And everybody was thinking, wow, let's buy some Bitcoin and get rich. You remember that? Okay. Cryptocurrencies are just one example of a use of the blockchain. And they're a good example. If you want a currency, you need something that can't be forged. You need something that can be accessed from anywhere. You need something that can be accessed quickly and cheaply. So Bitcoin met that requirement, right, by using the blockchain. And there's many other coins. I've just got 4 of them up there. Litecoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. Those are 4 of the largest cryptocurrencies. But there are thousands and thousands of cryptocurrencies that are available. In fact, if you really want to, you can go on YouTube. There are videos that will show you how to create your own cryptocurrency in under 5 minutes. It's that easy, right? Anybody can do it. You know, you guys could walk out of here and go back to your house, and every single one of you could create a cryptocurrency. Now, whether you made any money off of it just depends on how many people decide to use it, right? Bitcoin has made a lot of money for people because companies wanted to use it, and they would accept it for payment. Now, you might think, well, how in the world does this cryptocurrency work? It works the same way every currency works. You probably don't know this, but money isn't worth anything. It isn't. There's a small value in the paper that it's printed on or the metal value of the coins, but money inherently is not worth anything. Back after World War II and up till the early 1970s, money actually used to be worth something because currencies were directly tied to precious metals. So it actually said on the currency that you could take this piece of paper and it would be exchanged for X amount of gold or silver, platinum, or some other precious metal. In the early 1970s, the countries of the world went away from that. And the currency is no longer backed by any physical object. Why is money worth something? Because we all decided to agree that it was. Money is worth something because people will take it in exchange for something else. Okay, and that's true whether you're talking dirhams or dollars or euros or pounds. Doesn't matter. It's all the same. A cryptocurrency is exactly the same. It is only worth something if people will accept it as payment for some physical thing or for some service or labor that they're going to provide you, right? Now, the big difference is the cryptocurrencies aren't backed by any government. So the dirham is backed by the UAE government. And the UAE government will take action to keep the value of the dirham where they believe it's supposed to be. The cryptocurrencies aren't. And that was a positive and a negative. For some people, it was a positive because we've got this anonymous currency, so we can go spend money and nobody knows who did it. So if we want to buy something that we don't necessarily want associated with our name, we can do that. Of course, if you think about it, the kind of things you'd buy that you don't want associated with your name are not things you should be buying anyway, right? So what's the real value there? The problem is, since it's not backed by any government, you get things like this. Now, if you look back in 2010, you could buy a Bitcoin for literally a few US dollars. Okay? You get to last year, and Bitcoin was $19,000 per coin. Okay, the speculators, the people who like to gamble on the future market of currencies and things like that, ran the prices up. And when it got up to 17, 18,000, I was having all sorts of people who have no knowledge of IT or blockchain or anything like that approaching me saying, oh, can you help me buy some Bitcoin? And I'm like, no. Because if you do, you're going to go bankrupt. Okay? You're going to suffer a huge loss. And I had some people who were very upset at me about that because they're like, well, why won't you help me? I'll go find somebody else who will. I'm like, I am the one helping you. Listen to me. And most of the people didn't find somebody who could help them. A few did. The few who did ended up going off the cliff when Bitcoin dropped down to about 6,000. And they come back and they go, oh, you were trying to help me. It's like, yes. Okay? So this is the thing with cryptocurrencies or things like that. Unless it's backed by some actual value, you get this kind of volatility. Okay, so you have a little better idea about what blockchain is, a little bit about Bitcoin, starting to think of things you can do with it, yes? Okay, so let's talk about how the Business Cup Challenge is going to work this year. So, for 3 weeks, starting tomorrow on the 25th, you will get a new case study every Thursday. It will be due on the following Thursday, so you'll have 1 week to work on it. And then me and my team will work together and we'll give you feedback by Sunday. Okay, and we'll also put up a leaderboard so that you can see how you stand in relation to the 100 or so other teams that are participating. Now, we've got some rules about this. With more than 100 teams participating, we have to limit the size of your response. Okay, so not more than 2,000 words and 2 pages where you can put charts, graphs, and pictures to help illustrate what you're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay, that limits the size so that we can actually get through all 100 and some odd between Thursday evening and Sunday. You can do this in any format that you want. You could submit a PowerPoint or a Prezi. It could be in a document. Maybe it's a spreadsheet. You can even do a video if you want to, but we limit the video to not more than 5 minutes. Okay? If you go over the 2,000 words or over the 5 minutes, we actually have to start deducting points so that we don't get huge presentations. When we did this last time, I was getting 25 and 30-page documents from some teams, which showed a lot of initiative, but it was taking me about an hour to read through each one of them and give feedback. And with 100+ teams, we won't be able to do that, okay? So you've got to be concise. And you might think, well, that makes it harder. Yes, it does, but it teaches you an important skill. You all know who Elon Musk is, right? Okay? One of the richest people in the world. Imagine that you were at the Burj Khalifa and you get in the elevator and it's just you and Elon Musk. And you've got about 60 seconds between when you get on the elevator and when you get to your floor and you get off. You've got 60 seconds with one of the richest people in the world. Could you make a business case to him, to get him to either invest or at least to call you back and let you give a full pitch later on? Could you take a whole business idea and condense it down to 60 seconds? Okay, that's called an elevator pitch. And if you ever go out into the venture capital market to get people to fund a startup business, that's what you're going to be faced with. You're going to be put up on stage. There'll be a massive clock behind you, and you'll have anywhere from 60 seconds to, I've seen maybe 3 minutes to present your business case in such a way that they're willing to have you come back and present a full case to them. Okay, so learning how to present your business case concisely is very important because sometime in life, your business may depend on that for its survival. Okay? So let's talk about what you need to put into your case responses. First of all, you do not need to go into technical details. You don't need to explain how blockchain works. You don't need to explain how you're going to set up the computers and things like that. That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for are creative business ideas that make use of blockchain and its features, like being fast, being reliable, being cheap, things like that. You've got to show how the business makes money. So you'll need to have some sort of financial plan or break-even analysis, that kind of thing. Back in the early 2000s, or late 90s and early 2000s, we had the internet bubble. And just like that, we're going to have a blockchain bubble where companies are going to start up and they'll have very interesting ideas, except they don't make money. I'll give you an example from the internet bubble. You all like surfing the net, right? Right? Favorite activity when you're at home, yes? Okay, so a company started up in the late 90s, and this was their idea. You would install a browser plugin, and with that, it would monitor how much time you spend browsing the internet, and they would pay you for that. So imagine getting paid to surf the net. It didn't take people very long to go, well, this is easy. I can just set up a job on my computer that will surf the internet for me. So I don't even have to be there. So I can surf the internet 24 hours a day and get paid for it. And there were people who were getting paid thousands of dollars a month for surfing the net or having a little program on their computer surfing the net. Some people even set up multiple computers and were making tens of thousands of dollars a month. There was only one problem with this business. How does it make money? Their thinking was that we'll have all these people surfing the net and we'll go and we'll sell this to advertisers. So advertisers can put ads up. But think about it. If you're getting paid to surf the net and ads are being put up there, are you interested in those ads? No, that's not why you're there. You're not looking for anything. You're just randomly searching the net or even having your computer do it. And if your career is so bad that you've decided the best way for you to make money is to sit there and surf the internet, are you going to have money to buy products? No, right? So the advertisers, when they went to them, said, are you crazy? These people, if somebody's making their income from surfing the internet, they are not going to have money to buy things. And the company went bankrupt. Okay, so when you think of your idea, make sure you think about how is this going to make money? Because if you ever go talk to a venture capitalist, first thing they're going to ask you is, how do you monetize this? How do you make money? And what's the exit point? Okay? Now, you need to consider some other factors: political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal. So, for example, let's take Bitcoin. Can you use Bitcoin in China? Not legally. Okay, so you need to think about, with what I'm proposing, will I actually be able to use it? Will the law allow it? Will people be willing to do it? People can get really freaked out if they feel like you're doing things with their personal information that they don't like, or if you're spying on them. So you have to consider those social implications, right? So in your analysis, you need to go through and consider all 6 of those factors. The other thing you need to consider and address is, who are your competitors? And you need to think of who are your competitors now and who are your likely competitors. Because the truth of the matter is, if you come up with some great idea, very soon some other company, maybe Amazon, is going to decide to take it over, right? Think of Amazon. They've got the biggest cloud service in the world. And there's an expression that companies are now using. They say, we've been Amazoned. which means that Amazon disrupted their business, took away enough of their customers, they can't stay in business anymore. That's been happening to bookstores and grocery stores and all sorts of other companies all over the world. They get Amazoned, right? So you need to think about, if this works, who's likely to try and step in to be a competitor, and how can we make sure that they can't, or that we stay on top even if somebody else tries to come in. Okay? So that's how you'll present your responses to the cases. You'll think about it, you'll be creative, you'll make sure to address all of these points. And as I mentioned, we'll have a leaderboard. In week 4, the top 8 people on the leaderboard go straight to the final case. Okay, so that means that you're the best, you automatically go to the finals. However, just because you're not in the top 8 on the leaderboard doesn't mean it's over, doesn't mean you can't win. You've got a second chance. Okay, so in week 4, everybody gets the final case. Those who are not in the top 8 on the leaderboard also get an elevator pitch case. Remember that 60 seconds in the elevator with Elon Musk? Well, you're going to have your time. So you will go through and figure out an answer to the elevator pitch case, and you'll present that live at the finals, and you'll have 40 seconds. Okay? So you're not in the Burj Khalifa, you're in a slightly smaller building with Elon Musk. But the very best of those elevator pitches goes through to the finals. Okay, so on that last day at the finals, every team still has a chance. And we've got one more. We're going to have 10 teams in the finals. Any of you ever watch America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, X Factor, or something like that? What sits right in the middle of the table? The golden buzzer, okay? One team gets the golden buzzer. So one team that does the elevator pitch is going to be picked by the judges to go through to the finals. So even if you don't have the best elevator pitch, maybe you came up with the most creative way of doing your pitch. Or maybe you were the most improved team from the beginning. Who knows what will be the thing that triggers the judges, but the judges will pick one team to go through to the finals. Okay, so we'll have 10 teams in the finals. So we get to the final case. You can present it any way that you like to. You can do a PowerPoint, you can do a Prezi, you can make a video, you can get up and act it out as a Shakespearean play. Be creative, show us what you've got, okay? Remember, there's a strict 10-minute time limit. At the end of 10 minutes, you got to stop wherever you are in your presentation. So practice it over and over to make sure that you've got it down to like 9 minutes and 30 seconds to give yourself a little buffer, okay? The judges will then determine who gets first, second, and third place. And there will be prizes for those teams and for the teachers and counselors that were leading their teams. Does that make sense? Okay, so everybody's got the chance. Now, by show of hands, which team in here is going to win first place? I better see everybody's hands up. If you're here and not thinking you're going to win, you're in trouble already. Okay, that's great. We want to see that kind of enthusiasm. Does that make sense? Okay, any questions? Everybody feels confident? Sir? We'll be announcing the prizes over the next 4 weeks. Each week we'll be announcing a little bit more of the prizes. We want to build up the excitement as we get to it. But I'll just give you an indication. Last time we held the Business Cup Challenge, UAE National Bonds gave 1,000 Durham National Bond to everybody on the winning team. And there were a number of other prizes in addition to that. So just give you a little hint. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
The case studies that will be uploading, will they be in respect to the case study that you upload for us to read?
Yes. So on Thursday, tomorrow, I'll put up the first case study. You'll spend a week and you'll put your answer together, and that's what you'll upload back. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Oh, so we're looking for how creative the idea and how reasonable it is. Is it something that will actually make money? So we're looking for really good business ideas. Yes, ma'am. No, there's no elimination rounds. At the finals, every team still has a chance. Either you're in the top 8 or you get to do the elevator pitch and try and be one of the last 2. And when we get to the final round with the last 10 teams, the scoreboard is cleared. Everybody goes into that with exactly the same chance. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Yes, but you won't have to do it on the spot. You'll have a whole week to prepare for it. Yeah, so the question was the elevator pitch. You'll have the entire week to prepare for that. Sir? What? Okay, so the question is, will there be anyone using the ideas? No, we're not going to commercialize the idea. So if your team comes up with something good, make a business out of it. If it's really good, we'll refer you to a company that helps with startups, and you can see if you can get funding from them. Sir? The elevator pitch? Okay, so the question is, how does the elevator pitch works? You get up on stage, we'll tell you to start, and you, as quickly as possible, present your business idea. It's like, this is my idea, this is how it makes money, this is what the payback period looks like, these are the risk or constraints that I had to deal with, thank you, and that's it. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so during the elevator pitch, no handouts. During the final, if you want to, you could give handouts, but I would caution you about that because you'd have to make handouts for over 500 people, and it would take a long time to distribute them. So probably not the best idea. I'm sorry? Okay, so the judging criteria. We're looking for creativity, and we're looking for how viable your idea is as a business idea. Okay, so the people who are going to be on the judging panel are all people who have experience in business and are able to really determine whether an idea is something that's going to make money and be viable. Okay, I think we're, oh, sorry, sir. Yeah, we won't. That's not the business we're in. So we'll, your ideas are yours, and you're going to be presenting them in public, so you've got the priority on that. Okay? Okay, thank you so much. Any questions? Sir. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. Disadvantages of blockchain. That's hard. It's, it's secure, it's distributed, no single point of failure. It's really hard to come up with anything that is a disadvantage other than maybe saying that it's something that is not under your direct control. So, for example, if you have a ledger, you can keep it locked in a safe and nobody else can see it. Nobody knows it even exists. If you've got a blockchain out there, people can see that a blockchain does exist, but that's not really too much of a disadvantage. It's like asking, what's the disadvantage of the internet? Well, okay, people can abuse it, and that would be true of blockchain, but otherwise there's not really that much in the way of disadvantages. Sir? Oh, okay, so the question is, how much of blockchain's been implemented? Well, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies. There are businesses that have already moved their accounting records to blockchain. If you search on the internet, you'll see there are thousands of different applications. The UAE is already using blockchain for resolving rental disputes and keeping track of rental contracts. So if you're familiar with Ajari, that's moving to blockchain. Okay. Sir. A good question. Does Visa use blockchain now? They are moving in that direction. It's a big changeover, and the big challenge is figuring out how do they keep charging money when they're using blockchain. Sir, back row. Sorry? Oh, how can it be stable? Blockchain is running on thousands or millions of computers. So each computer has a copy of it, and even if one copy gets corrupted, it's got all those other copies. And if your copy gets corrupted, it can be recreated from the other copies. Part of the way blockchain works, if your system gets out of line with the consensus, it automatically updates itself to match the consensus. Sir? Okay, the question is who funds it? Nobody. The blockchain is open source software. It was actually created by either an individual or a group who called themselves Satoshi, and no one knows who that is. It's open source, so anybody can modify it, anybody can run it, and it operates by people voluntarily giving up some of their CPU cycles and network bandwidth. So there's nobody who really owns it in that way. Yes, ma'am. So Bitcoin was started by Satoshi, who, again, we don't know who that is. And Bitcoin has various companies that are using it who provide the exchange. So if you and I are both on the Bitcoin blockchain, we can transfer money to and from each other without anybody else involved, other than it gets copied on the whole blockchain. But let's say that I transfer money to you and you want to get that now in dirhams. There are companies that provide that exchange service, just like the exchanges at the mall. They'll, like Coinbase, for example, will exchange your Bitcoin for any currency in the world. So they make their money just like the exchanges at the mall by charging a small percent for exchanging to another currency. Sir? Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, Bitcoin is still legal in the UAE. Again, the challenge governments have with this is how do you regulate something that isn't physical? So if you and I decide to do a transaction in Bitcoin, it's anonymous. Nobody knows that it was me or you. So it's very hard for a government to block that. Even China, with the Great Firewall of China, is having a hard time with this. Yes, ma'am, you had a question? Okay. Okay, so it would come, the question is, with one company, will we get 100 unique solutions, or maybe we'll get the same solution from multiple groups? We may get the same solution, but again, it comes down to how well is it presented? Did they consider all of the different aspects? What's their financial model look like? So the same idea, but who presented it best? It's kind of like for all of those of you who browse the web, you know, who wore it best? Okay, who presented it best? Sir? Okay, so good question. What do you do if there was a mistake in a blockchain? You put through another transaction that corrects that mistake. So if I overcharged you, it was supposed to be 200 and I put in 2,000, then I'd put in another transaction of 1,800 coming back the other way. Okay, so you don't go back and change the blocks that are already committed. you just put in other blocks that have the opposite effect if you need to change it. Oh. Okay, so the question is Bitcoin a good currency? Bitcoin is still accepted by many merchants on the internet, but it's a fairly limited value. And when it was very volatile, a lot of merchants who used to accept it stopped. So to give you I don't own any Bitcoin because it's too volatile. I don't like gambling. So, you're much better with the currencies backed by governments. Sir?
Someone leaks information blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Someone not on the blockchain.
Okay, so the question was, what if somebody leaks information? The thing is, only the people who are participating in the blockchain can decrypt that particular blockchain. And if there's something that you really need to keep confidential, you encrypt that and then put that encrypted file in the blockchain, and then nobody except you and whoever else you personally give the decryption key can see what that is. Okay, and even in the Bitcoin blockchain, people have put encrypted documents in the blockchain that have nothing to do with the actual transaction, or maybe they do. We don't know, right? Sir?
How long does it till we replace blockchain or get faster?
Okay, blockchain is something that will be upgraded, but it will be evolutionary, not revolutionary. So blockchain was a revolutionary idea, just like the internet was. The internet distributed communications. Blockchain distributes ledgers. So there may be other ideas that come along later that are different than blockchain, but blockchain itself will just improve incrementally over time. But I would expect that 1,000 years from now, there will still be some child of blockchain that's been incrementally improved. It won't be completely replaced because, again, it's already got the key things. It's cheap, it's fast, it's reliable, it's secure. Yes, ma'am. Any what? Oh, so the competitors of blockchain are centralized databases, paper processes, things like that. There's not another technology that's right now openly competing with blockchain, other than the things that already existed before blockchain started, like having a central database. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so Google is a search engine, and they have a database, a centralized database where they have browsed every page on the internet and indexed them and set certain metadata values and then feed that back. For Google, yeah, Google has robots, or they call them robots, but they're basically programs that go and read every web page on the internet on a periodic basis, and they index what's in there, and then when you do a search, it uses an algorithm to go to that database and return results that match your search criteria. So it's the centralized database model, not a blockchain model. So on the blockchain, you can use any type of encryption you want. The standard program uses SHA 256 encryption, but you can use whatever encryption method you want. If you want to use elliptic curve cryptography or something like that, you can. Yeah, blockchain is a bit like a cloud. A cloud is a distributed way of storing things, and so is blockchain. So in that way, they're similar. Okay, so for the first 3 weeks, you'll submit either a video or an electronic file like a PowerPoint or Word document for us to check. It's only the final that you present live on stage. No, just send one format. So if you send a video, just send a video. If you send a presentation, just send a presentation. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Okay, this is a great question. How is blockchain so reliable when we don't know who controls it? Because nobody controls it. Blockchain uses open source software, so you can modify it, you can compile it yourself so that you know exactly what's in it, and you can run your own copy. It's what? Yeah, you can customize it for yourself. So an individual blockchain is as secure and as strong as the code that was used to run it. But you can read the code yourself, you can see what's there, you can compile it so you know what's in that compiled version. That's how you have security. It's the open source model like Linux versus a closed source model like Windows or iOS. Okay, one last question, yes. Replace IT what? Oh, yeah, okay, so can blockchain replace ID cards? Absolutely. Blockchain could be used to keep everybody's ID. So, for example, with your Emirates ID, that could all be stored on the blockchain, and instead of having a centralized database, when you stick your Emirates ID card into a reader, it would access the data on a blockchain to determine if that card is accurate and still valid. Yeah. Okay, one last question. Yes?
Will people have the chain block, like, stop using it? Will the service work?
Okay, so the question is, what if people stop using the blockchain? Yep. Because the blockchain relies on people voluntarily giving up a little bit of their CPU and network bandwidth, if everybody stopped using a particular blockchain, it dies. Okay? But when you're talking about Bitcoin with hundreds of millions of people using it, that's not a risk, unless Bitcoin goes to zero, in which case, yeah, it could happen. Okay, I think I'll need to stop there. Let me turn it back over to Pratika. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful workshop, Dan. So to all students, please be informed that this workshop has been recorded, and in case you want to see the workshop online, we will be sending you all the link to the video. And for those of you